Today on the podcast, we have Cyndi from New York joining us. Good morning, Cyndi.
Good morning, Deborah.
It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege.
So tell me what is on your mind today that you called in to talk to me.
So I am married 20 years and I have three adult kids and five grandchildren now, but I work two part-time vocational ministry jobs, one with my church and one as a resource coordinator for a pro-life pregnancy center. And I just had a question regarding rest and finding balance between life and work. Like I have a really high capacity and can accomplish a lot, but I find it difficult maintaining healthy boundaries or even slowing my pace without feeling guilty.
Yeah. Well, how do you know that it's become a problem? I mean, all of that sounds great. How do we know there's an issue?
Well, I find often I'm empty of anything to give to my husband and family.
And what does that look like practically?
Practically, I come home and I don't even want to engage. I just want to be alone. Um, yeah, sorry. It's a little bit of emotion.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? That's good. That's a good sign, and it's a signal. Um, what about that phrase that you were saying kind of brought up some emotion in you?
Well, it's just this pattern that I've had over and over. I've like tried to read some books. Do practical things, but I find this pattern like I'm good for a little while and then I hit a wall. Sometimes I'm like physically sick.
Hmm.
Like I'll get physically sick, which is like an indicator I should slow down. Or I'll be snappy with my family. It just seems like this cycle
Yeah.
of, like work, 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 get everything done. I can identify when I need to slow down, and then I do, and I feel better. But then it's just like I really just need help identifying why this pattern keeps happening over and over. Like I see it, I want to take care of it. Um, it's just hard. Like life, work and life bleed together. I just feel like I'm never turned off from
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
which is ministry in general can be. It's like a really fine balance.
Well, that's where it gets complicated is when we consider it ministry as well, because then we start narrating the story that this is essential, this is crucial, this is God's work. And if that's the case, then slowing down feels wrong.
Mhm.
Not doing it feels wrong. Setting a boundary
Mhm.
feels wrong. And so it sounds to me like you have this bucket, your fullness bucket, your tank, and unfortunately, it runs out long before you get to the end of your day. So by the time you get home, the bucket is already empty and it hasn't lasted. You haven't rationed it out through the end of the day so that when you get home and you walk into your house with the most important people, they feel the emptiness that you bring and you don't have anything left, try as you might. And it causes disappointment in you, disappointment in them. Has your family said anything about it?
My husband is definitely he tries to help me. Like he's great. He does the majority of the cooking, so I don't have to worry about like that kind of thing. But it is he does feel it. He does.
Yeah.
He definitely feels it and he acknowledges it and he tries to help as much as he can. He's helped me learn to say no for some things. But even if I say no, it doesn't help what I'm internally feeling.
Yeah. And what is it that you're internally feeling?
It's always guilt. Like I shouldn't be saying no. Like there's people that need things. There's so much work to be done. Um, you know, just I just can't shut it off.
So then tell me, what's the feeling that you have later on in the day when you get home? and you have spent it all and you have nothing left and a family member needs something from you, what's the feeling you have then?
That I have to rise to the occasion, even if I don't feel like it. Or sometimes it'll be a resentful feeling, and
Hmm.
sometimes it'll be like, okay, I can do one more thing.
Yeah,
And then that's at the expense of myself.
right. Yeah. So when you think back to this pattern, and specifically these stories of, I have to get it done, there's more work to do, it feels wrong not to, feels wrong to say no when there's needs. How long have you kind of carried that narrative in your life?
Probably probably my entire life. Um, more There was probably a chunk of my life where it was just me and nobody else. And I just took care of myself. And then um, probably into my 30s and 40s is when this really, like, I felt this in my childhood, and then I ran away from it and just took care of myself. And then it came back in my 30s and 40s.
How did you feel it in your childhood?
I'm the oldest, so I just had a lot of responsibility. I had to care for my younger siblings. Like, I just always had to be thinking of others.
Why do you use the phrase had to?
I didn't feel like I had a choice.
Tell me why.
I just My mom was frazzled. My dad was always working. Um, I just felt like if I didn't help, there would be chaos and there should be order.
Yeah. So how many kids were in the family growing up?
There were four of us girls.
Four girls, and you're the
Hmm.
oldest.
Hmm.
And you mentioned mom being frazzled. When you think back, now that you're an adult looking in hindsight, what do you think that was? What do you think was going on with her?
I think she took very good care of us physically, always cooked, made meals, all those things, but she never could take time for herself. And I don't know, she just didn't have a great capacity to meet our needs outside of physical needs. Um, so like when one of my sisters was upset, like they would always come to me and talk to me. And I don't know, she seemed present but distant.
Yeah,
So I felt like there was a lot that I had to compensate for.
yeah, yeah. So you became the compensator. You kind of filled in the gaps. And the story started developing of, if I don't do it, it's going to be left undone. And what's the damage that that might cause? So I have to step in. So I'm just curious, how did you get out of that situation? How did you eventually find it inside of you to leave?
I graduated from high school and I just left.
No
I left.
guilt?
Oh, I had tons of guilt. It's only recently that I've allowed myself to forgive myself or not take the responsibility of that. I needed to care for myself.
Yeah, and you did. So you at that point realized I can't do this anymore
Mhm.
because it's hurting me. And so you decided to leave and did you go to college? Is that what you said?
I worked for a while, then I went to college.
Okay. And
Yes,
you were living on
I,
your own.
I was living on my own at the age of 17.
Now, I'm just out of curiosity, what played out with your sisters? How did they do in life?
I have one sister who's married and has three children. I have one sister who's not married; she's alone. But very educated. She really went to college, multiple degrees. And then I have a younger sister who has struggled through life, but is now doing beautifully and is a single mom of a sweet little girl, my youngest
Mm.
sister.
So they're
They've
doing all
all
right.
done well. They've all done well. Everybody, I mean, not without, it's a long, complicated story, so not without a lot of struggle, all of us.
Sure. Yeah. And isn't that the story of life, really?
It is. Yes.
But I think the narrative that you're carrying, when I talk about soul care, the first 5 chapters of soul care does not start telling you how to practice soul care. And you might start reading it, okay, chapter 1, what do you want me to do, Deb? How am I supposed to take care of my soul? Okay, maybe it's in chapter 2. No, maybe it's in chapter 3, 4, 5, until finally you get to chapter 6. And that's where we start to unpack what to do. Because in chapter 1 through 5, we really have to unpack why you do it. Because if we just jump to the what, which is, Cyndi, you just need to set some more boundaries. Well, that's great. And you might be able to practice that for a day or a week or a month, or maybe even a prolonged period of time until you start defaulting back to the why.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, the why is the feeling of if I don't do it, nobody else will. It's on me. And that's a lot of responsibility to carry through life. And I'll challenge you. I don't think it's the most biblical narrative. You know,
Mm-hmm.
as a Christian, the self-sufficiency in that statement is loud. Even though those of us who carry that statement would think, well, I'm being selfless. I'm putting my needs down to help others. But the problem is, I'm believing that if I don't do it, nobody else will. And I'm taking God and his role and them and their personal responsibility out of the equation and just putting it on me.
Mm-hmm.
And while I understand there certainly were moments for you to do that in childhood, and that you often did the right thing by being there for your siblings, once it starts moving into unhealthy territory is when you give at the expense of yourself, in the sense that you're giving what you don't have to give anymore. There's nothing left. And I'm no longer healthy. I'm no longer balanced. I'm no longer joyful because I'm depleted and bitter and discontent and empty and tired. And the irony in all of that, as you know, when you get to a place where you've completely self-neglected, guess who the one and only thing you can think about in that moment is? Self.
Mm-hmm.
Self-neglect also has the word self in it. And when you get to that low point, you're like, get away from me. I can't handle anybody. And you just want to be alone. And it's in the irony is that in trying so hard to be selfless and give more than we have, we end up in a state of depletion and selfishness because we're just consumed with how horrible we feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts for you with really confronting your why. And I said, it seems like the big picture of your why is if I don't do it, nobody else will. And there's probably very clear roots of that from childhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you've got to allow God to change the narrative, to change the why, to change the story.
Mm-hmm.
If I asked you to pinpoint the why, what would you say? Mine's just kind of a theory based on what you've told
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think
Mm-hmm.
it kind of falls in line with that, or is there something even more specific of the narrative that you tell yourself?
No, I think you hit it. I think you hit it pretty spot on. It is, I feel like it's probably a control type thing, and even probably a tug of war, even with letting God do the things and not me. Like, self-reliance apart from God. I mean, we can do nothing apart from God. Um, so there's probably this tug of war, which then is some guilt and just, I don't want to disappoint anyone and I don't want to disappoint God.
Right.
Um, yeah, which has been the narrative my whole life.
You know, sometimes when we grow up with a parent who is frazzled and distant, we can start to, without even realizing it, place those descriptions onto God. That maybe he's a little frazzled and distant, and I don't want to put too much on him. So I'm just going to do it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to do it. I can do it for him. I'm good to do it, God. And you're going to be proud of me because I'm filling in the gaps. It's like that same childhood narrative plays out in our relationship with God. But God is not your frazzled, depleted mom. God is present. He is ready to fill in the gaps the moment you're ready to acknowledge the gaps. He wants to be as involved as you will allow him to be, and he wants to prove himself to you that he is a miracle working God and he doesn't need you, but he
Mm-hmm.
wants you. You want to help? Sure. But you're out of capacity. That's okay too. Let me take care of it and let me take care of you. And when we
Mm-hmm.
do offer the little that we have and don't pretend we have more than what we have, the loaves and the fish, this is all I got. I wish I had more, but this is it. He takes it and he multiplies it, and we have nothing left but to look at him with praise. Like, only you could
Mm-hmm.
have done that. Only you could have done that with the limits that I have, with the limited capacity that I have, with the limited energy that I have, with the limited intellect that I have, with the limited talent that I have. Only you could have done that. And I promise you, Cyndi, the more boundaries I have set in my life, the more I have seen God do remarkable things. And I'm not even tempted to think it had anything to do with me anymore because it's completely obvious with the little loaves and fish that I offer him that he can take it and do so much with it. And
Mm-hmm.
it has grown my faith. Not only have I become healthier along the way because I'm filled and aware, but it's grown my faith because it's like when I don't fill in the gaps because I'm unable,
Mm-hmm.
he does. And it's been just a beautiful journey that I think is up ahead for you if you can really start to tune into those narratives that take over when you're asked to do more than you are able. And I think there's a humility that comes with also saying, I'm not able. I'm maxed out. I've given you all that I can because you don't want to disappoint them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you pretend to be something you're not instead of honoring your capacity. Even
Yeah.
Jesus honored his capacity, and he was
Right.
God, fully man, but he was like, I need to get away. I need
Mm-hmm.
to take a break and go fill up. I need a nap. I need to stop and rest. But Jesus, they want you over in that town. Well, I'm going to this town, not that town, because he had boundaries. He understood his capacity. And he took the time to make sure he stayed filled so that he could continue pouring out the way that God wanted him to. And in soul care, we go through 6 rhythms that Jesus practiced to care for his soul. So I think it'll really help and encourage you. But we can practice all of these rhythms, yet if we don't get to the why that comes up every day, that
Mm-hmm.
moment of, okay, what am I really believing right now? Believing that I have to stay late, even though I shouldn't, because I'm going to miss something at home. I'm going to be tired and depleted. This isn't actually my responsibility. but there's nobody else to do it. What is your narrative in the moment? Because that is going to make or break this.
Mm.
And do you really trust God with the moments where you have reached your limits?
Mhm. That's good. That's really good.
And I hope that helps you. I mean, honestly, this is a mind game first. This is a mental shift before anything
Mhm.
else. And we
Mm.
can't shift what we're not aware of.
Mhm.
So it's taking the time to tune in all throughout the day, even write things down of what you're thinking and how it makes you feel, like the belief system that's causing you to do certain
Mhm.
things and then
Mhm.
feel depleted by the end of the day.
Mm.
Even with
Right.
kids and grandkids, the thoughts and feelings of if I don't do it, well, for example, the other day there was this opportunity for me to leave the house with a couple of the kids and my husband, and that meant I'd have to leave two kids behind, the oldest and the youngest. And I had so many reasons to feel guilty. Maybe I should stay home. My oldest is 14. She's capable. She's mature. She wants to babysit her little brother and spend time with him. But I'm thinking of all the reasons why
Mhm.
I shouldn't go, even though going would fill me up. But interestingly enough, it's the narrative. Once I started telling myself, this is good for her. This is good for them. They get some bonding time. I don't need to be present. I allow them to have this special time together and make memories and, build their relationship. And once I started changing the narrative, it was very easy to go, you know? And but if the narrative was, no, I shouldn't leave her alone. This isn't good for her. This could damage her psyche if she has to
Mm.
babysit her little brother. And what if something happens and I'm not there? The narrative changes everything
Mm.
because it affects how you feel and then it affects what you do. And so I really want you to tune in. That's your homework this week is to tune in to the why. What's going on beneath the surface all throughout the day with all the different things that come your way so that you can start building a healthy framework mentally that will set you up to then start practicing the rhythms of soul care in a way that lasts, not just for a couple weeks or a couple days or a couple months until you default back, but you'll actually start to change the why. And maybe this requires a little work. Maybe it means, hey, digging into some of that past stuff with a
Mm.
counselor and
Mm.
starting to unpack some of those narratives and where you filled in the gaps in ways you probably shouldn't have. And doing some of that work. Have you ever done some
Mhm.
of that past work with a counselor?
A little bit about specific things that have happened in my life, but not like going back to childhood like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
a
Might be a
little
good
bit,
next
but
step.
it might be. Yeah, that
Yeah.
might be a good. Yes.
Well, I hope that helps you. Tell me what is your big takeaway? Like, what are you taking away with you as you go today?
Just that I think I've been approaching it as the to-dos instead of the whys. Definitely have not been looking at the whys, which I kind of instinctively kind of knew inside of myself, but don't really want to go there. It's hard, but
Yeah,
I can't sustain a different life practice if I don't, because I've seen that it is a pattern that the start and stop over and over again. So,
right.
like, just so thank you. Like, you kind of just reaffirmed what I kind of already knew, but um, I think I approached this. I wanted you to tell me how to fix it. And it
Right.
was just the same answer that I think God's been giving me. So I'm
So it
looking
must be
forward
the
to
right
reading your
answer in
book.
that case. If it's the same one God's been giving you,
I think so.
must be
So,
the right
yeah,
answer.
I think so.
The roles that we carried in childhood will not change until we confront them and rewrite them. And so that's the journey that God has you on next.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good, Deborah.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
for being on and thank you for sharing your story with us. I know it'll resonate with a lot of others as well.
Thank you so
Time to
much.
practice a little soul care.
Yes, sounds great.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.